Okay, so you worked with Tivi to help you understand the psychological components of your eating. And then what happened next?
So over the course of the next couple of months that we worked together, pretty much she would address, my questions and give me specific concrete steps um, to help me become more empowered on my own. Like, so for example, working on different self-care ideas for myself, or something that I think is very challenging for many people, busy women, is like tuning into your hunger before you're starving.
Mhm.
So like actually setting myself an alarm, um, like at two key points in the day, just not necessarily to eat, but to check in with myself and say, oh, am I ready um, for a snack? And I called it an energetic snack. It wasn't necessarily like my chocolate that I wanted to have, which I could have that too, but it was more like something that was going to give me a little bit of a prolonged energy, whether it was a fruit or, a cheese stick or nuts, a kind bar. And for people, it could be different things. It was something that was going to kind of hold me till the next like proper meal.
Mhm.
So that was really something that was like not my thing. I never had done that before. And, exploring different types of movement, not like moving away from like, if it doesn't hurt, it doesn't do anything.
Right.
Like I was so wired that like, oh, you need to burn a lot of calories and like, it really needs to hurt and you must do the full hour in order for it to do anything. I really like shifted from that to more of a balanced approach and saying, this is where I'm at now. I'm going to explore different types of movement. I really, really challenged myself. Just for one example, I had tried yoga when I was expecting about like 13 years ago. And I was like, get me out of here. It was a
Mhm.
prenatal yoga class. It was not my thing. Um, and then about 2 years ago, I said, you know what? I'm going to try it again. Different instructor, different, totally different environment. And I was like, wow, this is like transformational for me.
Mhm.
Um, and I really, really enjoyed it. And really like helped me so much in terms of like tapping into like joyful movement and even gentle movement. And believe me, I was sweating when I was finished, even though it was gentle movement. Um, and it just taught me like it doesn't have to be painful in order for it to be valuable.
Right.
And that being said, maybe someone is running a marathon and they need to train in a specific way. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like what we're trying to do as for the average person. And I'm like trying to do it. It's not a weight loss tool for me anymore. It's more about feeling good, and energetic and more flexible, and stronger. So I think it just my values have just changed a lot. And then really are still carrying me through.
So I totally agree with that joyful movement because I remember when I started with intuitive eating, I also had that like narrative in my head, like if I don't sweat, if it doesn't hurt, it doesn't really count. And I remember when I started and I switched over to like, I'm only going to exercise in a way that feels good. Like, first of all, I'm obsessed with spin. I love it. And I think it's such fun energy, but some people hate it. And I hate
Never tried it.
you have to try it. It's like, and I even say like that it's like one of my like most spiritual times. Like I love like the music and it's so motivational and like everyone's so into it, at least where I go. And like everyone's just like friendly and nice and the lights are off. You can really get into like a nice zone. But like the kickboxing, like it's just I feel like I'm gonna die. Like I don't really like to feel like I'm gonna die, you know? So like I just don't do that class. Like it's not fun for me at all. Like um so yeah, that's a really good point. Like, and I think that it just really goes with the whole concept of intuition. Like that with really strict dieting or really strict movement, there's this concept like don't listen to your body, keep pushing. Like
Right.
and then there's the intuitive side of it is like listen to your body, see what feels good. Like movement is supposed to be enjoyable. And I also love what you said about the yoga 13 years ago versus now. Like don't write anything off. Like you could try things in a different setting, indoor, outdoor, with people, without people, different instructor, different time of your life, so really good things to explore. Okay, so then what happened to you that you needed to really explore the gentle nutrition?
So I have a couple of friends that like were kind of doing intuitive eating alongside of me. I'd also at some point discovered Rena Reiser at some point, and she had a support group, which you were on, and giving in your tidbits. And, it was some things that we were just trying to explore, as you come to peace with food and you relax your defenses a little bit, it's easier than to hear that a salad is going to provide you with more nutrients or more vitamins than a glass of water, like just point blank, right? Water hydrates us, but it doesn't necessarily have vitamins in it, unless you're drinking some special kind of water. I'm just using that as a neutral example. So, it's kind of like I got to a point of acceptance that I was ready to hear that food does play a certain role in providing us nutritional value. And especially, everyone has a different medical background. And I'm not going to go into necessarily other areas where I felt like nutrition would play a role, but I'll be specific more about the gestational diabetes, because I think that many women are being diagnosed with that currently, and the numbers just keep on rising. A lot of it is just the way they're diagnosing it. But I've had it before in other pregnancies, but I even see like a real shift in the medical world, the way they're handling it, even if you have the same diagnostic criteria. And at this point, I was hoping that I would be able to like hold on to the intuitive eating piece and be able to manage my gestational diabetes like together. So yeah, it was going to be like a big challenge for me.
So what happened when you were diagnosed? And I guess it probably threw you for a loop, because you wanted to use gentle nutrition but not be restrictive.
Right. Yeah. So it was very, I would say it was a lot of inner work, a lot of mind work to switch my focus a little bit and to not necessarily demonize carbohydrates because they're bad, but to look at it with the lens of what kinds of foods are going to keep my blood sugar stable. So weight loss was off the table. And Baruch Hashem, I think that many health professionals don't attack a woman when they're pregnant for gaining weight. I mean, I know that there are doctors that do, but I think from my hearing about other friends, usually they don't mind if you gain weight. So this wasn't about gaining or losing weight. It was about like my blood sugar levels, which had to be maintained within certain parameters. So it was eating to keep my blood sugar balanced. It was exercising to keep my blood sugar balanced. So I also want to say here, like, I worked really hard to try to find a dietitian that specialized in diabetes. It was really hard, especially being that I really know a lot of the way that we're supposed to eat, quote unquote. I've done this before. I was looking for new information. And I just want to put it out there that sometimes there's not just one answer. Like, I believe it's also in sync with intuitive eating to, use medicine, like traditional Western medicine, as in oral medication if somebody needs, or insulin if someone needs, along with the exercise, along with like nutritional counseling, along with alternative medicine. And honestly, I used all of the above in my journey. Mm-hmm. So the food piece is that's like was one piece. And I feel like in general, that intuitive eating is like an asay tov approach. It's as opposed to restricting, it's more about adding. What can I add that's going to help me? Right. So, for example, when it comes to, a particular meal, right? I've had in the past dietitians tell me, like, if you had, a certain amount of carbohydrates, so then now start adding in protein or start adding in fat. Mm-hmm. Now, I've already discovered that like no person can tell me exactly what is going to make my blood sugar rise. Right. The challenge is that you don't really have the same amount of time to play around with, in in regular life, if you're doing intuitive eating and you're just trying to experiment with different foods and see how you feel after you eat them, or just the quantities as it feels in your body, if you don't have a particular health issue, so then you have the time to play around. But with gestational diabetes, you need to submit your blood sugar numbers to your doctor at your next appointment, which is whether 2 weeks later,
Right.
and it's pressurizing. Like, you know, it's like a test. It kind of feels like a test.
Right. And besides for the doctor looking at it, you want to make sure you're healthy. It's not just like the doctor being like the judge and yelling at you for not following the quote unquote diet. It's also like you want to make sure like you're healthy and the baby's healthy.
Right. So with that being said, it's, you know, it's kind of very controversial, like the whole diabetes numbers and pregnancy. A lot of it has to do with the way medicine has evolved, with malpractice insurance,
Everything.
with everything, you know, and, you know, each person has to do their due research to figure out like what's that balance, you know, of getting good medical care and really having a doctor that supports you. I'm also very fortunate to have a wonderful endocrinologist that helped me have perspective with my gestational diabetes. And honestly, I had to switch gynecology, OBGYN, in the middle of my pregnancy. So sometimes that happens, that you do need to find a better like OBGYN that's going to be supportive of your knowledge, your choices, like, because fear mongering just doesn't work.
So your original OBGYN was doing that, was like fear mongering?
So some of the professionals in the practice were. They said to me, "Oh, well, maybe you already damaged your baby," and I was like, "I didn't even know I was pregnant." Like, I mean, like, you know,
right.
Like Hashem is in charge, you know, and not that she was necessarily a God-fearing person or religious person or Jewish and has my belief system, but like, you don't say that to a pregnant woman.
Right.
I do the best I can, and that's not helpful.
Right.
It's not helpful. And even with gestational diabetes, many doctors will tell you, and they will tell you, it's not one meal that you have that's going to like, oh my gosh, like throw your health out the window.
Right.
It's important to keep in perspective. But I will say that like, whereas I came to like a certain like plateau equilibrium with my intuitive eating, I had to kind of reinvent it all over again and apply it with gestational diabetes all over again in a different way. So for example, I would go for walks after my meals because that is shown to help lower blood sugar. You know, it was hard. I will say it was not an easy place to be, to feel like, oh, it's freezing cold outside. I really don't want to be going for a walk. But then again, I just had supper, and this is going to help me immediately with my blood sugar and also in the long term. So I really tried to like keep that perspective and not like begin to, oh my gosh, hate exercising or hate the walk. I did some videos online at some point. My kids would do it with me. I really kept on trying to bring it like full circle. I'm doing this. This is a short term. This is for the health of my baby. This is for my health. And I felt like intuitive eating actually like prepped me for being able to sustain making changes to my lifestyle in order to sustain a healthy pregnancy. So that was a motivation. Like the other way around, like in my other pregnancies, like I felt like this is not fair. Like, why do I need to do this?
It's so interesting.
And over here, like it was still really hard, especially my numbers were a little bit more elevated than the other pregnancies. With each subsequent pregnancy, it can get worse. Also, I have dabbled into alternative medicine, which there are things out there that can help lower blood sugar. So people should do their research if that's something, and that is in line with intuitive eating. You're not necessarily restricting. I also found making my own choices, my own food choices really helped. I don't know if people are aware, but when you have gestational diabetes, typically you need to test your blood sugar 4 times a day. You need to test it in the morning, fasting, and after one or 2 hours after each meal, depending on your doctor's preference. And every doctor will give you their guidelines, which are pretty standard. But again, you know, do that on research. I don't want to say like what my doctor said to me, but first of all, advocate for yourself. I found when I told my doctor that like if my numbers get too low, I'm not going to feel good, she was willing to like give me a higher threshold, which was helpful. So I feel like we have to advocate for ourselves. You know, if a doctor says, oh, well, you gained a little bit too much weight, like just ignore it. Like just let it go over your head. That the weight is separate from the blood sugar.